All right, let's talk about the Detroit Lions. I think in front of everybody, it's obvious they're the best team, the team to beat in the NFC. They made a big move a few short days ago ahead of the trade deadline, acquiring Za'Darius Smith. I think everyone understands that or knows that up to this point. But Dan Campbell, a head coach, made a really smart move when it comes to Smith and his plan for him. I think it's a great sign for the rest of the year for Detroit. I'm Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, like I mentioned, the Lions clearly the best team right now in the NFC. Frankly, maybe the NFL, certainly the most dominant. And they needed to address the defensive end position ahead of the trade deadline after the unfortunate injury, of course, to Aiden Hutchinson. That went out and got it done, adding Za'Darius Smith. But it was not just that move by itself that was really smart. It's Dan Campbell's approach and how he's going to integrate Za'Darius Smith that I think is a great decision as well. Let's get into the detailed parts of this reporting, courtesy of NBC Sports. Let's throw it up. Smith played in the first 9 games of the season for the Browns and was set for a bye week before being traded to the Lions on Tuesday. At a Wednesday press conference, head coach Dan Campbell said that the team is giving Smith a couple of rest days before he joins the team in Detroit on Friday. The Lions will come up for a plan for Smith's status against the Texans at that point. That's certainly a place to use him, Campbell said. We'll see what it is when he gets back here on Friday. I think it's a really smart approach by Dan Campbell and the Lions. It's clear they're not acquiring Smith just for a quick turnaround, just to fix them to win one game this upcoming Sunday. They acquired Smith. They brought him into the fold to help them with their Super Bowl run. I think it's a great strategy Dan Campbell is using here. Miles, I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. But first, Lions fans in the comment section below obviously got an interesting matchup coming up this weekend. Maybe you have a potential Super Bowl matchup. Who knows? The Texans are pretty good, certainly on quarterback and head coach. Give us your prediction. Final score, Lions versus Texans. Really curious what you guys have to say. Put it in the comment section below. But Miles, what are your thoughts on this latest news out of Detroit?
Yeah, Nick, certainly I think that this move here has implications for the Lions going forward, making sure that Smith is healthy for the playoffs. I think that this is a great move, whether they use him this weekend or not. They might decide, hey, we don't even need to use him this weekend. We can get by without him. We'll give him this whole week of rest. He hasn't had a bye week yet. And we'll play this weekend. We'll have him start fresh the following week, which I think that would be a great move as well if they feel like they can get the win without him. But outside of all that, outside of Za'Darius Smith, I think this is a really smart move for the Lions in general, just showing that Dan Campbell is the player's coach. Dan Campbell is the guy to say, hey, look, when I bring you in, when we trade for you, we don't expect you to go out. How many times do we see these players? You look at the Ravens, they get Deontay Johnson. They just stick him out there for a couple of plays, not even really play him. They don't even really pass him the ball, but he's out there doing stuff where they probably could have rested him, doing whatever. It'd be fine. Chiefs, DeAndre Hopkins, Uche, they get these guys out there right away, which I'm not saying that's a bad move here, but it's just showing Dan Campbell, he has the foresight to see Za'Darius Smith hasn't had a bye week. I'm going to let him rest, potentially even sit him out this weekend as well, then start him fresh. I think this is really great foresight for Dan Campbell to show other veteran free agents in the future or people that potentially would want to be traded to Detroit in the future. Hey, I'm a coach that takes care of my players. I'm a coach who pays attention to my players' needs. I'm not just going to trade for you. How many coaches would trade for a player who looks in to see if a guy had his bye week yet or not? I mean, I'm sure there's some consideration there, but I don't think it's really high up on the priority list for a coach or a front office to be like, well, did this guy have his bye week already? I don't think that really comes into play too often to make sure that the bye weeks line up and the players are well rested. So I think this is kudos to the Lions front office, kudos to Dan Campbell to make a really tiny move that probably is insignificant to a lot of people, but it shows players, veterans, potential future free agents. This is a team that looks out for its players, even when it comes down to the fine, minute details.
Yeah, I think you hit on something very briefly in your opening comments about making sure Smith is healthy for the playoff run. And at this point in the season, it's important to understand, it sounds obvious, everybody is hurt. Whether you show up on the injured report or not, you're banged up, you're sore, your muscles are fatigued. That's why the bye week is so critical. That's why players really want a mid or late season bye. It gives them a chance to rest some of those muscles, helps them avoid injuries down the stretch run. If the Lions obviously traded for Smith and then he immediately got hurt and missed a potential playoff Super Bowl push, that would totally obviously defeat the purpose of trading for him. So making sure he's well rested, not rushing him prematurely, letting him have a full bye week is a really smart move by itself. But let's put that aside for a second. Let me give a round of applause for Dan Campbell doing something I have been begging for him to do for so much this season. Finally view yourself as a favorite and take the long game approach. Dan Campbell, one of his strengths that's helped him so much with the turnaround is that he does not sacrifice a yard. He does not sacrifice a possession. He'll go for it on fourth down so many times. He'll have the fake punts. He'll do all this kind of crazy stuff. And that was great when they were an up-and-coming team, when they were scrapping, working their way to the top. But it's clear that this season, they're probably the most talented team in football across the board, right? Based just on paper, they're playing great, coaching great, skill players, all pros everywhere. They are a star-studded, stacked team. We've seen the results on Sundays. Dan Campbell, I was really concerned. Is he going to start taking, the underdog approach too far and maybe be too aggressive and put some of his players in bad positions that hurts them for a deep playoff push? Resting Smith in front of what could be a huge game against the Houston Texans, right? Old Dan Campbell 2 years ago, he may sit there and say, yeah, we'll throw Smith out there because we got to win this game. We're going to have 3 fake punts. We're going to do all this stuff. We got to win this game. Right now, Dan Campbell's like, listen, we've got 1 loss. We're the best team in the NFC by far. Our focus is the long game. Our focus is a title run. We're not trying to get to another win and that's it, right? We will take another win. That's our goal in the short term, but we're thinking Super Bowl. We acquired Smith before the trade deadline to help us win a title. That's it. If Smith not playing against the Texans means it doesn't hurt us from winning a title, we won't play him, right? We're only going to bring him into the fold. We're only going to do things that'll help us win that championship. I love Dan Campbell for understanding that, for at least showing that he understands that. That was my biggest risk with this Detroit Lions team, believe it or not. And I love Dan Campbell. I love the culture. I love his energy. He is awesome. He's clearly been one of the best coaches, one of the best hires in a very long time by the Detroit Lions. But the one question, to me anyway, that I've always been waiting to see answered is how will he handle being a favorite? Will he take the long game approach like Andy Reid does, like Harbaugh does with the Baltimore Ravens, where like Bill Belichick did with the Patriots for so many years? I've been waiting for it. Shanahan with the 49ers does this too. I've been waiting for it, and this is a great example of it, and I think it's a great sign for the season for the Detroit Lions.